Sarah still doesn't let me forget it.
Aunty Dot, wouldn't you?
Right, come grab a seat. Yeah. Right, I'll get this ready, mate. Catch up, yep.
I ask that all guests please be seated. Please find your desks. Please find your chairs and find yourselves a seat, please, everyone. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. I invite everyone to please stand for the Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency, Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, AC. I ask that everyone please remain standing for the marching on of the Royal Australian Navy contingent. If someone's lost an umbrella, I believe it's presenting itself in the front rank. Thanks so much indeed. There's always someone, isn't there? It's that sort of day. Welcome everyone for being here. My name is Uncle Charles Parkiner. It's my delight as the chairperson of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee to be the MC for today's event. As is our custom and as is only right, I ask you to first of all be seated and then join me in welcoming for a welcome to country, Uncle Josh West from the Bunurong Land Council Aboriginal Corporation. Uncle. There. Thanks. Cheers, brother.
Oh, thanks, Unc. Yeah, I've got to raise that. You're a bit shorter than me. How are we all going? Firstly, like to introduce myself. My name's Uncle Josh West, a proud Bunurong Palawa man, Burrion Ballock clan, Mornington Peninsula, Trawley clan, Northeast Lutruwita, or Tassie as you fellas might know it. Here to welcome you to our sacred lands of ours, the sacred lands of the Bunurong people. But before I do that, the most important thing is I pay my respects. I pay my respects to the land in which we meet on today, Bunurong Bunurong land, Kulin Nation land, land of my ancestors, land of my family. And I pay my respects to those warriors, the ones that come before us, the ones that walked, hunted, traded, sat round that barn, handed down knowledge, fire, a major totem for us blackfellas, healing country, ceremony. I pay my respects to all the elders we have here today, from all the different mobs, all the different countries. We all come together today, and we come together on these sacred lands to remember the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander soldiers from all different divisions that fought and sacrificed themselves, maybe just to get a feed, to get out, to get a bit of moolah, but not even recognised in the census as part of this country, and to come back still not recognised, and to be treated the way we've been treated since those days. I acknowledge the pain, the suffering, but we heal, we go on. And that's why we are here today, to remember, to acknowledge, to respect, to gather, to think about that trauma that has been passed down, intergenerational trauma. And that's just from one thing, the war. I'd like to acknowledge my grandfather, George Robert West, POW, Changi, 15 years of age, lied about his age with all his brothers, went to war, and come home, never ever the same again, as many did. So pay my respects to everyone here today. I'd like to welcome you to the sacred lands on this very, very sacred, special day of ours. In my language, Wamajenka Wardiali, Wantarumbanarambik. Welcome everyone, friends, to Bunurong country. We cleanse this area. We'll get rid of that negative energy and bad juju, a ceremony that's been practiced since creation. So Ngujin, thank you. Neki, take care. That's about it, so thank you.
Thanks so much indeed, Uncle Josh. Really appreciate it. And as Uncle Josh mentioned, what we opted to do this year was, rather than have everybody stream through and smoke themselves, that we started the smoking earlier. It is wafting across you. Breathe it in, let it waft over you, and know that, as Unc said, it is a cleansing smoke. I welcome so many dignitaries here today, and there are so many indeed. I'm going to leave it to the co-founder of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee to acknowledge most of those in his speech. We're doing things a little bit inappropriately today, or a little bit changing of the way of things. But I do want to recognise and acknowledge the leadership and reconciliation efforts of the late Aunty Dot Peters, who's chair and co-founder of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Service, and Mr Sam Halim, or I should say Flight Sergeant Sam Halim, co-founder of the service and the committee, and all other committee members, those here and those in the past. There is a photographer here today, wandering around, marvellous fellow who's been here many times before during this event, James Henry. And as is my wont, I like to throw a little bit of things in there differently. Go and look up on the internet James Henry and look up just how much of an amazing fella this is. And if you want a really cute song, look up his song, I Love Mosquitoes. He is a really accomplished singer-songwriter, and that is one of my favourite songs, I Love Mosquitoes. If you don't wish to be photographed, then simply let James know and he will accommodate you without a shadow of a doubt. Now, I do want to acknowledge some very special dignitaries here today. Of course, the Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency, Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner AC, the Minister for Veterans, the Honourable Natalie Suleiman MP, who will be representing the Premier of Victoria, and the Honourable, should be representing the Premier, the Honourable Jacinta Allen, and Jana Stewart, Senator for Victoria, representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Anthony Albanese MP. Senator, thank you so much indeed for attending. The Minister for First Peoples is unable to attend today, unfortunately. And I acknowledge also all the members of our elected body, the Gullang Wal, the First Peoples Assembly Victoria. And I'm really thrilled to see in the front row over here, we have our new co-chairs who've been recently elected and taken on this incredible task of leadership at a very difficult time in this state's history. And that is Jaron Murray-Jackson and Mariki Onus, who are our leaders. And I'd like you to acknowledge them, please. And there are many others I can see in the audience as well. So thank you all. Indy, I see you there. Brother, thank you so much indeed. Uncle Troy, great to have everyone here. I also acknowledge all those people, Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, who have served or are serving in this country's forces over the years. All First Nations people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and all other members of the community who have come along today at such an important time and to such a very important service. And you'll hear more about that later on. What I'd like to do now is ask that our first speaker, Colonel Catherine Corrigan, Acting Chair of the Shrine of Remembrance, to please step forward and share a few words. Please join me in welcoming Catherine Carrigan. Thank you.
Good morning. As said, my name's Colonel Catherine Carrigan and I'm the Acting Chair of the Shrine Board of Trustees. On behalf of the trustees, I welcome you all here today to join us in remembrance. The Shrine of Remembrance is held in care by the Shrine Board of Trustees on behalf of all Victorians. We acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which the shrine stands, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. As a place of remembrance and storytelling, we honour their deep connection to country and waterways, shaped by generations of stories and memories. Today, we pause to remember the service and sacrifice of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander servicemen and women. First Nations people have had a long and proud history of serving in the defence of our nation. They have served in every conflict and peacekeeping mission involving Australia for more than a century. This, in despite of the fact that First Nations people were not allowed to enlist until the Second World War, and for many years their service was not recognised. Since 2006, we have been honoured to hold this annual service at the Shrine, to honour and recognise the service of Aboriginal and Torres Strait service personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Carrigan. It's now my absolute delight to welcome someone to speak to you today who has been at the forefront of this service for 20 years. Please join me in welcoming co-founder of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Service, Flight Sergeant Sam Halim.
I would like to begin by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past and present. I would like to extend that respect to all First Nations people here today. As co-founder of this service, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the 20th anniversary of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Service. We have many distinguished guests here today. Welcome to Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, AC, Governor of Victoria. The Honourable Natalie Suleiman, MP, Minister for Veterans, representing the Premier of Victoria. Senator Yara Stewart, representing both the Prime Minister and Senator Malandiri McCarthy, Minister for Indigenous Australians. Sheena Watt, MP, representing the Honourable Peter Khalil, Assistant Minister for Defence. Senator Lydia Thorpe. MPs, thank you and welcome to this service. This service began as a simple act of remembrance more than 20 years ago when I was president of Healesville RSL sub-branch. The late Aunty Dot Peters came to me and asked if the RSL would honour her father and other Indigenous soldiers who have fought and died for Australia, but had received little or no recognition. As a former flight sergeant in the Royal Australian Air Force, I always believed if you fight for your country owes you acknowledgement and recognition. Why then had these soldiers been forgotten? the idea for a special service took shape in my mind. Here was a chance to rewrite this dark part of our nation's military history. But to do this, I would need the backing of my sub-branch committee. The year was 2006, and Kevin Rudd had not yet made his apology to the stolen generation. My sub-branch committee was made up entirely of non-Indigenous ex-servicemen. But they got behind Aunty Dot and I, and we had our first service at Healesville RSL sub-branch. At our service, I'm proud to say, for the first time, I raised the Aboriginal flag, and a recording of the didgeridoo was played alongside the ode during Reconciliation Week. This was the first time this had ever been done at an RSL. Now, 20 years strong, the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Service stands as a shining example of what can be achieved when we all work together. It stands as a beacon of hope, shining into the darkest corners and lighting the path towards a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to finish by saying a few thank yous. This service has been held at the Shrine of Remembrance every year since 2006, and we are deeply indebted to the Shrine Board of Trustees for their generosity. Thank you also to the wonderful staff at the Shrine who support us each and every year. Thank you to the members of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee, a small but dedicated group of Indigenous and non-Indigenous volunteers who have worked so hard to bring this service to us today. To our friends at First Peoples State Relations in the Victorian Government, thank you for the assistance you have provided over many years. To our long-time supporters, Yarra Ranges Council and Cindy McLeish MP, thank you. You have never missed a service. Thank you to Navy, Army, Air Force, Victoria Police, CFA, Ambulance Victoria, Museums Victoria, Rotary, RSL, and Legacy. And finally, Uncle Charles Pakana, this year's Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee Chair and our wonderful MC. My final words go to you. It's always a pleasure to work with you. My deepest respect to you. Thank you, brother. We must all remember, again, we must all remember, we are one, we are Australian. Lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Sam Halim. As Sam mentioned, I am the current chairman of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee. It's a role that I took on only about 6 or 7 months ago after Sam had been asking me to take it on for about 5 years. And finally, in a point of weakness, I think after I'd been driving for about 5 hours without a break and was still at the driving wheel as my way up to Canberra to visit one of my daughters, I just said, yes, all right, just get off the bloody phone for goodness sake. But it was, whilst it was something made in haste, I believe it was a great step forward. And I thank Sam for your persistence and for your ongoing support, and that of Helen and the rest of the committee as well. I will point out just a couple of quick things. We do have the opportunity for people who wish to learn more about the committee itself and the work that we do. You can speak to the various committee members. We'll be wearing name badges and you can have a word to us. And I believe Peter Backer is over there to your left. And I just want to make mention of Peter Backer. I've interviewed Peter Backer as a journalist many times over the past several years Peter, who is a non-Aboriginal man, has been at the forefront of gaining recognition for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Services personnel, more specifically from Victoria. He has done incredible work. He works closely with Uncle Michael Bell from the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, and of course liaises very closely with the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee. I encourage everyone, if you have information about a service person that you believe has not been recognised as a First Nations person, then please, I implore you to go over and see Peter. This is the man's life. It is so important. And Peter, from the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee, from myself in particular, thank you and respect to you. As I've got about 2 minutes left, I'm going to acknowledge my father. My father, Fred Wells, who was the first of 3 successive generations of Aboriginal journalists, but importantly also was a member of the 2nd 33rd Australian Infantry or Imperial Forces. He fought against the Germans in the North Africa campaign and fought against the Japanese in the Pacific campaign. He rarely spoke of the war, as I'm sure many people here will understand. He spoke about it twice only, and both those times I wished he hadn't. It was just such a harrowing recount of experiences. And I think what we need to do is to acknowledge and respect every single person who dons this uniform or who supports someone who dons the uniform of this country. They go through so much. They are prepared to put themselves through so much, and they are to be respected. And I'm sure I'm probably teaching most of you here how to suck eggs, aren't I? Because that's just a given thing. But then ask yourself, why wasn't my father? Why weren't so many Aboriginal service personnel able to identify safely and securely as Aboriginal people having returned from places and times of conflict? That is a blot on our own national landscape and something we must all seek to heal and go forward with. And I will finish off with this one thing because it is pertinent to we being here in Victoria and it being 2026. We are in the modern treaty era. The modern treaty era is an era in which I believe much of the harm, much of the anger, much of the sorrow that has been inflicted on First Nations people and indeed the entire state and the country over the past 247 years, there is a chance for it to be addressed. I proudly support treaty in this state. I don't agree with it 100%. I've yet to meet anybody who agrees with the treaty process 100%. Nor have I yet to meet anybody who agrees with our Westminster democratic system 100%. But it is what we have, it is working well, and I urge everyone here to support treaty because there is so much that will come to benefit the entire Victoria and ultimately, I believe, the entire Australia. I speak on behalf of my father when I say this because I know my father would be a vocal advocate for treaty. So on behalf of him, on behalf of my daughter Karina and my other 2 beautiful children, I say here proudly, I support treaty. I thank you very much. It is now my absolute pleasure to change the tone a little bit and introduce the Yangali Mullam Singers for their first song. Now, the Yangali Mullam Singers are a singing and storytelling group that began as an elders choir in 2014 and rapidly turned into a reconciliation group that performs at a variety of events. And we're very fortunate that they've been able to perform here quite a number of years. So please join me in welcoming them for their first performance, Yillal by Uncle Joe Geyer, the Yangali Mullam Singers. The Yangali Mullum Singers, thank you so much indeed. We'll be hearing from them again in a short while. It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Joe West. Joe is a Murriwara man, I should say, an Australian Army officer and the CEO of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Veterans Association. He served more than 20 years in the Australian Army and is a permanent advocate for recognition of First Nations service. He's led national commemorative and policy efforts to improve support, well-being and connection for First Nations veterans and their families. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Colonel, Associate Professor Joe West.
Thank you very much, Uncle. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge all veterans who've served everywhere, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. My name is Joe West. I'm a proud Murriwari warrior from regional New South Wales, from the country area north of Burke and Brewarrina. As mentioned, I'm the CEO of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Veterans Association, a charity which is focused on improving the lives of First Nations veterans, in-service members and their families. I'm also the staff officer for Army Headquarters for First Nations Australians. This year, the National Reconciliation Week's theme is All In. And in defence, this is not an abstract concept. It means service and sacrifice. It means standing beside one another, trusting one another, and accepting responsibility for the person on your left and the person on your right. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander soldiers, sailors and aviators have done that in every modern conflict in Australia, for Australia, from the Boer War to Afghanistan. They served gallantly with honour and integrity alongside their non-Indigenous mates. But for much of that time they served when this nation did not recognise them equally. They served even when the laws of the time formally forbade them from that service. In uniform, many were treated as equals. They fought beside their mates. They were promoted on merit. They led, endured and sacrificed. But when they returned home, too many were denied the equality they had earned on the battlefield. They were denied pensions, land grants, entry to pubs, support from ex-service organisations, and at times access to the very service clubs that were designed to bring veterans together. Their families were denied recognition, their stories were left from the national memory. And each year we say, lest we forget. Those words mean, let us not forget. But it means more than just remembering some of those stories and leaving others behind. It means remembering truthfully, completely and respectfully. It means remembering every soldier, sailor and aviator, who they were, where they came from and what they gave. One of those soldiers was Private Harold West, my grandfather's brother. Harold is a Murriwari warrior who joined the army at Gaduga in New South Wales alongside his cousin, Private George Leonard. They joined seeking adventure, fair pay and equality. On the Kokoda Trail, George Leonard was killed in action. Uncle Harold became known across the battlefield for his courage. When he died in Port Moresby, Sapper Bert Barros penned the poem The Coloured Digger, recognising both Harold's bravery and the injustice that he would not be properly recognised just because he was Aboriginal. Uncle Harold, through the poem, has become an important symbol of overlooked and forgotten Indigenous service. His story reminds us that recognition requires truth. It requires us to admit that as a nation, we did not always honour all of those who served. It is a reminder that we as a nation did not keep our commitment to those that were prepared to give everything. But it's also a reminder of unity and true mateship. There were non-Indigenous soldiers who spoke out about the injustices, defending their mates when they were denied access to pubs. Physical courage on the battlefield. Home. In 2015, I had the privilege of leading a group of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander soldiers to Gallipoli. We walked the battlefield, we conducted traditional calling and ceremony. Peninsula and returned it to the lone pine tree at the Australian War Memorial, an act of bringing the spirits home. That act mattered because recognition matters and culture matters and truth matters, and that the fallen must be honoured properly. And that is what All In means. It means remembering the veterans who were forgotten. It remembers and telling those stories that were left out. It means making our future generations know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander service is not a footnote or an annex to Australia's military history. It is a central and core part of our nation's story. Today we reflect on a hard truth. As a nation, we did forget some of our veterans, but from this day forward, we should be all in, lest we forget.
Thank you so much indeed, Lieutenant Colonel West. Our next speaker is no stranger to speaking at this event, and she's the Minister for Veterans, a very important portfolio to have in our government. The Honourable Natalie Suleiman MP is a lifelong local of St Albans and was born and raised proudly, I believe, in the West. She is the first Muslim woman to be elected to the Parliament of Victoria, and as I mentioned, is the Minister for Veterans, Small and Family Businesses, Employment and Tourism. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Natalie Suleiman MP. Got to keep it going, got to keep it going.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Uncle Charles. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're gathered here today, the Burrungong people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and to any other elders of Aboriginal people here today. I acknowledge all veterans who have joined us and thank you for your service and sacrifice. I'd also like to thank the families and friends that support you and also the organisations. I'd also like to acknowledge Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner AC, the Governor of Victoria. Also Senator Jana Stewart representing the Prime Minister, and of course my parliamentary colleague Sheena Watt, MP representing the Minister for First Peoples, and other members of Parliament from the Commonwealth and Victorian parliaments as well. Members of the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria and the Treaty Authority, Uncle Charles, of course the Chair of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee, co-founder of the Service and Committee, Sam Halim, the Shrine of Remembrance trustees, governors and staff, members of the Victorian Veterans Council, any current and former members of the Australian Defence Force, and of course the Consular General of Turkey and Consular General of Egypt, guests and friends, good morning to you all. It is an honour to be here as the Minister for Veterans in Victoria, and thank you again for having me here at this special service. Here in Victoria, we want to ensure that veterans have the support, the resources and the connections they need. Our vision for Victorian veterans is to build a strong and healthy future beyond the service in the Australian Defence Force, while also making sure their service and sacrifice is acknowledged and celebrated. This includes the thousands of First Peoples that have served in the Australian Defence Force for more than a century. In the past, First Peoples service and sacrifices were not adequately recognised in Australia. And through events like this one, we are working to address this and giving the recognition to First Peoples who have served in every conflict and peacekeeping mission involving Australia for more than a century. Now, in its 20th year, this annual service is more than just an opportunity to reflect and remember. It's also part of a strong tradition of recognition in the spirit of reconciliation. And with this week beginning National Reconciliation Week, this event is also an important chance to bring government representatives, First Peoples community members, defence personnel, and of course our broader community together to acknowledge the contributions of First Peoples who have served and who have sacrificed and continue to serve to this day. And before I finish today, I must also note that this event would not exist without the vision and commitment of the late Aunty Dot Peters AM and of course Sam Halim. In 2006, Aunty Dot approached the RSL Healesville sub-branch to request that a didgeridoo be played on Anzac Day to honour her father who tragically died while serving in the Thai-Burma Railway. And working with Sam Halim, the service emerged. 20 years later, we continue to honour all the Aboriginal returned servicemen and women. And this service has been replicated across the country. And it is my honour to be here with you all to continue this legacy today. We remember today and every day. Thank you again to the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee for putting this event and for having me join you here today. Lest we forget.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you also to the patient people who are in the background pulling all this event together, because without them, I wouldn't have been pulled over just a minute ago while the Minister was speaking and reminded that I forgot to announce the Yungali Mullam Singers for their second song. So thank you to all those amazingly patient yet attentive people in the background. And on that note, let's please welcome once again the Yungali Mullam Singers. Thank you once again to the Ngali Mullum Singers performing Shelter, written by Eric Bogle. I now ask everyone to please stand up for the catafalque party and for the catafalque party to mount the cenotaph. I now invite everyone to please be seated. And we now come to the laying of the wreaths part of the event. And I'm just going to briefly explain the wreath process. The most important part of all from a cultural perspective is that the talented Uncle Ron Murray will be performing during the wreath laying service. Now, for those of you who do not know Uncle Ron, he is a senior elder of the Wamba people based in Jarrah country near Castlemaine. And as a musician, Uncle Ron has performed around the world as a didgeridoo or yidaki soloist, and he's absolutely passionate about keeping Aboriginal stories, art, culture alive. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to, as I call your group, I'll then make mention of your name. Please step forward to collect your wreath from a volunteer, or if you have your wreath with you, proceed to the eternal flame with your wreath. We do have approximately 60 wreaths to get through, so I urge you all just to be aware of the time constraints on that. Our first group, the Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency, Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner AC. Group 2, the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee, co-founder, retired Flight Sergeant Sam Halim, former chair Dr. Andrew Peters and his son Jackson Peters, who handmade the gum leaf wreath in honour of Andrew's mother, Aunty Dot Peters, and Karina Wells, my daughter, from Victorian Aboriginal News on behalf of the chair of the Victorian Aboriginal Remembrance Committee. I now call upon First Nations principal bodies on behalf of Gullang the co-chairs Mariki Onus and Jardin Murray Jackson, on behalf of the Treaty Authority member Thelma Austin, and the National Commissioner for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children and Young People, Adjunct Professor Sue Ann Hunter. Members of Parliament, Group 4, on behalf of the Premier of Victoria, the Minister for Veterans, the Honourable Natalie Suleiman MP, on behalf of the Prime Minister of Australia, Senator Jana Stewart MP. Do we have anybody representing the First Minister for First Peoples of Victoria, the Honourable Ros Spence, and representing Assistant Minister for Defence, Peter Carlil, Ms Sheena Watt MP, Ms Ellen Sandell MP, Ms Melinda Barth MP, Ms Anne-Marie Hermans MP, Mr Tom McIntosh MP, Ms Rachel Payne MP, Mr Lee Talamas MP, Ms Cindy McLeish MP, and Senator Lydia Thorpe. Group 5, Australian Defence Force, representing the Royal Australian Navy, Captain Ben Esler, representing the Australian Army, Brigadier Patrick Murray, representing the Royal Australian Air Force, Group Captain Benjamin Graves, representing the Royal Australian Air Force based East Sale, Wing Commander Conan Brett, representing the 6th Battalion of my old regiment, the Royal Australian Regiment, Mr Muhammad Abdul Rahman, and Chapter Lead Garran Smith, Defence, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Network, and Brigadier Michelle McCormick from the 4th Brigade. Group 6, Consul General of Turkey, Mr Dogan Izik. Group 7, people representing the Shrine of Remembrance and Veterans. Colonel Catherine Carrigan, the Shrine of Remembrance, Hayley Karatchawala and Elizabeth Dukuna, Shrine of Remembrance Youth Ambassadors, CEO of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Veterans Association, Associate Professor Lieutenant Colonel Joseph West, Commodore Greg York, AM, CSC, Royal Australian Navy, and Brett West, Victorian Veterans Council. Lieutenant Commander Pelagia Marco Giannakis, RSL Victoria. Kerry Jenke from Melbourne Legacy. Mike O'Meara, OAM, Vasey RSL Care. Barbara Stallard, Air Force Association of Victoria. Jerry Andrews, Engineers Australia. Janice Furstenberg, Victorian Association of Jewish Ex-Servicemen and Women Australia. And Nicole Rowlandson, Department for Veterans Affairs. Group 8, representatives of the Victorian Government and local government. Deputy Secretary and proud Yorta man, Mr Terry Garwood, Department of Premier and Cabinet. The Mayor of Yarra Ranges Council, Councillor Richard Higgins, and Councillor Jim Child, Yarra Ranges Shire Council, long-time supporters of this service. Bayside City Council, Maribyrnong City Council, Marybeck City Council, the City of Whittlesea, Moonee Valley City Council, Ambulance Victoria, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, Department of Treasury and Finance. If I didn't mention Marybeck Council, Forest Management Victoria, or Forest Fire Management Victoria, Museums Victoria, Victorian Multicultural Commission, and Victoria Police. Group 9, community organisations and members of our community. The Brotherhood of St Lawrence, Connecting Home, First Nations College, Reconciliation Victoria, Rachel Story and Associates, Rotary Club Warragul, the Una Health Service, Wanturna College, Wemba Consulting, Auntie Glenda Eccles, Uncle Albert Zantuck and Jody Hand, Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation, Tani Morris, Meg Devoran Honey, OAM, and Matrick Thaker. I now invite anyone else here who has a wreath to please come forward and lay the wreath. I invite everyone to please stand for the reading of the Ode and for Uncle Rodney Carter of the Jar Jar Warrung to come forward and read the ode for us in language and in English as well. Thank you so much.
Bau angat, mataguli, turungin, mangangu, mataguli, turungin, bau ain, juan, berpain, daukjakin, nyawini, gumap, Perpi, taupund, angu, anin. They shall grow not old, as we are left to grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. Please join me in thanking the RAF Band, accompanied by Uncle Ron Murray and RAF vocalist Corporal Samantha Moore. I ask that everybody please remain standing for the dismounting of the Catafalque Party. Catafalque Party, dismount. That brings us to the conclusion of today's event. I wish to thank everybody for attending today, and it has been an outstanding event, and your presence certainly has made it all the more so. Your respect for all service personnel who have done so much in the service of this country can never be underrated. You are invited to a bit of a nosh further round back there, and of course to speak to the various members of the committee if you so wish. And I remind everybody, please have a word to Peter Backer if you'd like to know a bit more about his work, and also if you have any ideas or any notifications of First Nations servicemen who have not yet been recognised. Piper, if you wouldn't mind leading everyone to lunch. Thank you everyone for attending. Respect to you all.